Hi there, and welcome back. This is the second part of my competitive Smash player's guide to Rivals of Aether. If you haven't seen the first part yet, I'd recommend watching that first to get some more background on the game. You can find a link to the first part in the description below. In this part, we're going to be taking a deeper look at the mechanics of the game and discuss how they affect the flow of gameplay. As discussed in part 1, one of the most important things that sets Rivals of Aether apart from Smash Brothers is how Rivals makes tweaks to the established gameplay elements that Smash is known for. Of course, you could easily get a sense of what exactly has been changed just from going through the tutorials, and you might know a few of these differences yourself just from word of mouth. As such, the goal of this video will be to not just explain the key mechanical differences that Rivals has, but rather to explain how exactly these differences change how the game is played. That way, you can go in with a deeper understanding of what to expect when starting off, and what adjustments you will need to make to your gameplay in order to do well in this new game. Before we begin, however, I do still highly recommend going through the in-game tutorials on your own if you haven't already done so after you watch this video. Even if you have a lot of experience in Smash, I still consider them essentials for any and all players who are picking up Rivals for the first time. They're relatively thorough and in-depth without being too technically overwhelming or difficult, and are great for getting a first-hand feel for the different concepts that I'll be going over in this video. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's start with something that's easily compared to Smash, how Rivals handles DI, or Directional Influence. DI in Rivals acts like how it does in Melee in Project M. This means that you can only adjust your knockback angle by holding a direction perpendicular to your initial trajectory while you're in hit pause. That's the brief freeze frame that occurs right as you're getting hit before your knockback begins. DI will not change how far you are launched, only the angle at which you are launched at. There is no vectoring or LSI type system like in later Smash games. This will likely take some getting used to if you've only been playing since Smash 4, but it's something that's crucial to master in order to survive longer and get out of combos easier. Rivals also has a form of SDI, or Smash Directional Influence, renamed to Shift Directional Influence in Rivals. More accurately, it has a version of what Smash players refer to as ASDI, or Automatic SDI. If you hold a directional input while being hit by a move, you will slightly shift in that direction. This is very useful for escaping certain multi-hit attacks. Note that there is no system that behaves exactly like Smash's SDI in terms of inputs. That is, you don't need to repeatedly input a direction for each hit to improve your SDI in Rivals. You'll get the maximum shift possible by simply holding a direction that you want to move in. You don't need to mutilate your controller in order to escape multi-hit combo moves. Finally, Rivals has its own additional mechanic, which exists in tandem with these other systems, called Drift DI. You know how you hear about people having Mario Kart DI when playing Smash? Like how they'll be holding their control stick as hard as they can long after they've been hit by an attack? Well, in Rivals, that actually accomplishes something. Drift DI allows you to drift left or right after you've been hit by an attack while you're in hit stun. This allows you to adjust how far you will travel while in hit stun. There are multiple applications for this technique, such as allowing you to survive longer when sent very far, and allowing for counterplay to certain combo paths where DI alone would not allow you to escape. A common example for the latter application is something like Krag's forward air. If you just hold in, the combination of your inward DI and inward drift will cause you to get hit by another forward air. However, by DIing in and then holding out when you enter hit stun, you'll drift far enough away to avoid getting hit by the second forward air. Using all three of these systems in tandem with one another is critical for surviving longer, escaping combos effectively, and putting yourself in a better position after you get hit. Consequently, awareness of these three options is critical for developing a strong punish game. Rivals of Aether features directional air dodges, again, like Melee and PM. Rivals' air dodges stand out, however, because they don't put you into a special fall, and you can perform any action after the air dodge's end lag is over. Unlike Ultimate, the air dodge lag is relatively short, both in the air and when you air dodge into the ground. This means that Wavedashing and wave landing are possible. Rivals makes a few tweaks to Wavedashing to make it much more intuitive and accessible than in Melee or Project M. In those games, an air dodge input will only register after a jump squat is complete, and a lack of buffer on top of that makes the technique feel clunky to a lot of people. In Rivals, however, you can buffer the air dodge input during jump squat, and you'll perform an air dodge as soon as your jump squat is over. This means that you can simply press jump and dodge at the same time to perform a perfectly timed wave dash. There's also just enough of a tolerance such that if you're air dodging close enough to the ground, you'll simply snap to the ground. This allows you to do a max distance wave dash by simply jumping and doing a buffered air dodge either straight left or right. It should be noted that this tolerance also applies to platforms and the edges of stages, allowing you to wave land onto them from either slightly beneath or beside them as well, making these movement options much more forgiving to execute. The timing aspect of the wave dash is further simplified by the fact that every character shares the same jump squat length and air dodge timing, so the timing of more advanced movement is universal across the entire cast. If you're unsure as to why this modern adaptation of the wave dash is a good thing, and would like to learn more about why this is such a big deal, check out this video by Adam Kara to learn more about what the wave dash contributes to the platform fighter genre. There's a link in the description. But to briefly summarize, wave dashing allows for richer and more nuanced movement by keeping grounded options accessible while accommodating more precise positioning, as well as allowing for new types of interactions with platforms and other stage elements. It is this creativity and flexibility that has led to wave dashing becoming an icon of competitive melee. The fact that this technique has become streamlined and more accessible means that players can begin applying the interesting and complex movement that it allows without having to develop a lot of extra muscle memory to work around quirks of an aged game engine. This modern embrace of the wave dash is a significant factor in why I believe that Rivals of Aether has some of the finest and smoothest movement that I've experienced in a platform fighter to this day. There are no input-based landing lag reduction systems for aerials in Rivals of Aether. There's no L cancelling like in Melee or PM, no Z cancelling like in 64, etc. However, thanks to a new mechanic called hit cancelling, most attacks have their end lag or landing lag reduced by 1/3 if the attack hits an opponent. You might also see this phenomenon called whiff lag, in reference to the fact that moves are laggier on whiff than on hit. There's a few exceptions, like certain special moves, which have different amounts of lag on whiff versus hit, but the 1/3 rule is pretty standard across the majority of attacks. In short, this allows for Rivals to have a very quick and fluid-feeling combo game while discouraging random button mashing. Even though you can link moves together quickly once you get a combo started, the fact that your moves are laggier when they don't connect means that whiff punishing is still a very present part of gameplay. This is especially important in a game without shields. Speaking of which, let's talk about one of Rivals' most famous characteristics. Unlike Smash, there is no shield or spot dodge in Rivals of Aether. Instead, there's a parry system, which acts as your main defensive option. If you know an attack from your opponent is coming, you can time a parry to avoid all damage from the attack and leave your opponent stunned, allowing you to retaliate with your own combo, or at higher percents, kill them outright. Parrying also works against projectiles, with a successfully timed parry reflecting the projectile back in the opposite direction and allowing it to damage the person who threw it instead. There are a few exceptions where parrying certain projectiles will result in the projectile user being stunned instead, often with increased stun depending on how far away they are. In addition, parrying a jab will not put the opponent in parry stun unless they finish their jab combo or cancel it into a tilt. Using the jab to attempt to hit your opponent without getting caught by a parry is commonly called jab checking, and is a very useful option when planning your offense. Parrying also provides you with a period of invincibility. This allows for multi-hit moves to be parried at any point in the attack without fearing getting hit by a later hit. This is also useful when dealing with an opponent who is zoning you out, as the invincibility gives you some time to close the distance between you and your opponent. The omission of shields also implies the removal of grabs. With no real block state, there's no need for a grab system in order to play around blocking opponents. There are still some moves in Rivals that visually function like grabs, but there's no universal grab and throw system. Because the parry is the primary defensive mechanic of Rivals, in practice it ends up being way more influential to the flow of gameplay than Smash Ultimate's similar parry mechanic, which fills much more of an auxiliary role in practice due to the relatively low reward that a successful parry provides in that game. Speaking of Smash, the timing of a parry is similar to that of Ultimate's parrying or performing a perfect shield in older Smash titles, so having a feel for timing those options should give you a good foundation on how to time your parries in Rivals. I should stress that parrying is your main, strictly defensive tool. Good defense in this game comes from using parries in conjunction with other fundamental skills, such as movement, stage control, and counterattacking. In practice, neutral in this game is often pretty action-intensive, with a lot of give and take between the two players. Just because there's no shields doesn't mean the neutral is just mindless button mashing. The idea of sitting in a defensive state like a shield or a block isn't really a thing in Rivals, but that doesn't mean that a defensive playstyle can't be put to good use. If you're worried about not being able to play a more reserved or defensive game plan, your habits might need some adjusting coming into Rivals, but options exist such that you'll still be able to play to your strengths and thrive in this new environment. Another one of the more notorious changes to Rivals is that it does away with the concept of the ledge. Simply put, any mechanic that involved the ledge in Smash, ledge grabbing, tethering to ledge hogging, ledge trumping, all of that is gone in Rivals. Instead, Rivals grants every character a wall jump, which can be used once per airtime, including while in Special Fall after using a recovery move. Wall jumping will put you out of special fall as well, allowing you to string together multiple recovery moves in your approach to the stage. By the way, I would also like to note that the wall jump input is different in Rivals than it is in Smash. You perform a wall jump by holding a movement direction towards the wall and then pressing jump. Think kinda like Mega Man X or Hollow Knight or something like that. Naturally, these changes mean that the recovery process in Rivals ends up playing out very differently. Obviously, the lack of ledges means that your goal instead becomes to land back on stage directly. In practice, the typical recovery flowchart ends up going like so. 1. Use a recovery option. 2. Wall jump out of your special fall. And 3. Use another recovery option. Your air dodge doesn't put you into special fall either, so you can mix it into your recovery to either get some extra distance or to wave land on stage after you make it past the wall. Of course, this outline that I gave is just a very general guideline. It's important to learn your character's recovery mix-ups and how to outplay your opponent off stage with them, or else you might fall into an exploitable pattern. These tweaks to the recovery flowchart fundamentally change the flow of gameplay off stage, and they're often a significant adjustment point for players coming from Smash, so don't feel too bad if it takes you a while to get used to. Once you get past the muscle memory hurdle, you'll find that these new gameplay mechanics result in an edgeguarding game and offstage gameplay that's very complex, freeform, and rich in creativity. The lack of a ledge grab state introducing a forced pause into the edgeguarding flowchart means that Rivals edgeguards are often a lot more dynamic and unpredictable. A lot of importance is placed on managing your resources, such as your double jump and your air dodge, as you make your way back to solid ground. You don't want to use them too early in case you need them for mix-ups as you get closer to the stage. Of course, this also applies to Smash, but the lack of a ledge makes this management and planning more holistic across the entire offstage experience by not introducing a separate gameplay state where this management doesn't really apply. Smash's ledge game has its own merits, of course, but the fact that recovery is treated more so as a singular gameplay state rather than being broken up into separate phases is something that I believe makes for a more cohesive and fluid experience. The removal of the ledge means that players have to be a lot more creative about how they approach the stage and how they secure their safe return while avoiding their opponent, rather than almost always going through the same ledge-based interaction with each recovery process. Because of how different this aspect of Rivals tends to be in practice, one of the first things that I tell newer players who are coming to Rivals from Smash is to practice their off-stage play. Practice moving around off-stage, practice using your different recovery options, learn how far you can go with all of your different resources, and just get comfortable with being off-stage in general, both as the edgeguarder and the one being edge-guarded. Getting a feel for this part of the game will improve your survivability and ability to close out stocks tremendously. As a quick side note, a cool thing about Rivals' jab chains is that you can interrupt them with any of your tilts. In other words, you can use any of your tilts as finishers to a jab combo. This is quite useful because it allows you to set up into any of your tilts by using a jab first, which are safe on parry. So when combined with the practice of jab checking, this can be a powerful tool in your combo game by allowing you to use a safer jab to lead into a more combo-friendly tilt to get a bigger punish. Do note, however, that this only applies to characters who have dedicated jab strains, not characters who only have a single jab. Whenever you hit an opponent with an aerial, you can buffer a fast fall input during hit pause to instantly cancel your vertical momentum and fast fall to the ground after your hit pause ends. This is called hitfalling, and it is a core factor in the complexity of Rivals' combo game. Hitfalling allows you to expand your combo options after landing an aerial attack by returning to the ground faster, which then allows you to perform any of your grounded options faster, or jump again to hit the opponent with another aerial attack. This technique really speeds up the pace of the advantage state, and allows for a lot of creativity in your combo routes. It should be noted that while hitfalling certainly opens up a lot of options, and it's a crucial skill to learn, you don't necessarily want to always hitfall. This isn't a melee L-cancel type situation where you always need to be doing it after every aerial attack. It is something that you want to do quite frequently, but some combo routes are only possible if you don't hitfall, depending on factors like positioning and percentage. In other words, unlike L-canceling, there's definitely a decision-making factor to performing this technique. It's not just a habitual input that you will always need to perform just for the sake of not always losing out in terms of frame data. That said, it's definitely worth getting very comfortable with this technique, as it'll open up the game in all sorts of exciting new ways. So, that should cover the most major changes that Rivals of Aether introduces to the standard Smash gameplay formula. But there's one last thing that I want to go over before we close this video out. I've touched on this briefly already, but you might have noticed that the goal of a lot of these mechanical changes is to streamline the gameplay experience in terms of execution. But don't start thinking that you're getting into Rivals thinking it's just an easier melee or something like that. Don't get me wrong, Smash fundamentals will help you a lot, Just like any other platform fighter, you need to learn how to play neutral, how to edgeguard well, how your moves work, how to tech chase, combo, recover. All of those different fundamental skills will definitely give you a great foundation for playing Rivals of Aether. But you're not going to be immediately playing at the same level that you were in Smash, and there's no shame in that. Indeed, Smash and Rivals are both platform fighters, and skills that you learn from one entry in the genre can definitely transfer over to another, but never in a one-to-one fashion. Think of it like learning a new game in any other genre. Look at traditional fighters, for example. You can get really good at Street Fighter V, but that doesn't guarantee that you're going to be great at Mortal Kombat 11 or Dragon Ball FighterZ or Under Night In-Birth or whatever. Rivals is its own platform fighter, and as long as you put in good practice, you'll be able to get to that same level that you're used to, maybe even further beyond. But you're going to get your butt kicked. You will lose a lot of games, and that's okay. Learning any new skill requires that you make some mistakes. Your foundation of fundamentals is just that, a foundation. You'll have to put in some work on top of your existing foundation to hone your gameplay in Rivals specifically. Rivals of Aether is its own game with its own intricacies and complexities that will take time and effort to learn, and it'll take even more time and effort to become proficient with these new systems. I'm sure a lot of veterans already understand this concept of learning and adjusting to a new game, but I just wanted to touch on these points real quick to help newer players start with the right expectations. As we'll discuss later, there's lots of resources out there to help you on your journey with learning this new game, so there's no need to feel intimidated. I'm sure that you've got what it takes. Just remember to practice well, stay humble, and most importantly, make sure that you're having fun. After all, it's a video game. That's what's most important. On that note, this will conclude part 2 of this series. Hopefully, this gave you a better understanding of the nuances that Rivals of Aether introduces when compared to Smash. Coming up next will be part 3, where we will dive deeper into each of the playable characters and highlight what makes them special. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you around. Take care, y'all!